think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Rosebud, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Greetings, welcome back to the Video Lineup Podcast. My name is Thomas.
And I'm Nick.
And today we are discussing. Oh, I got like blurry eyes for a second. Couldn't see myself. You can never really see yourself unless you're looking in a mirror. So
That's true.
I couldn't see. We are doing Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
Reviewing, discussing.
Number 4? No, 5. Is it?
5. It's number 5.
The top one.
We have not published other episodes, so it feels like number 4.
Yeah.
So previously, we're doing the AFI Top 100 films of all time. We've never seen some of them. We have seen some of them a couple of times. Mm-hmm. So the first one was Citizen Kane, then Casablanca, then The Godfather.
Yep.
Then
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind, another
Long. Classic.
We'll call them lambs. Laughs. Long-ass movies. Long-ass films. Excuse me if you're listening with your children because I said ass, but seriously, this is a long movie and so was Gone with the Wind, and oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to there being, is there a short film, maybe a 12-minute thing in this?
I think so. And you forced me to watch it twice as well.
Yes, and Nicholas is the most studious of the two of us.
Well, I feel like with these long films, there's so much to take in, and I have a terrible memory, so I think I need to watch them twice to
you're
at least contribute something. So.
Well, I watched it for the first time when I was probably about 21.
Oh, really?
I bought the DVD and I distinctly remember it being a hot Sunday afternoon, and I managed to get the television to myself and put that on. And yes, it was over 2 discs too.
That's a big commitment to buy it.
Yeah, I think.
time,
that's. I play the role of the movie buff here, so I have to invest something.
Yeah.
At least even if it was, a long time ago. But and the second time I watched it was this time. So between the two of us, we've watched it twice. You probably have a better grasp on it because you watched it twice in a month.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That is bigger than me watching it.
I actually bought the film, I don't know why, on iTunes ages ago.
Really?
And it's just been sitting there.
It was destiny.
Yeah.
You don't know how you came to procure the digital?
I think there's something, someone had a conversation about it. I thought I should watch it, and I bought it.
And okay, so let's just quickly, before I ask you the question that immediately I want to ask, we need to give our dear listeners a brief synopsis. Have you got your synopsis locked and loaded so they know?
I do.
The movie Lawrence of Arabia, you got the word Lawrence in there. Who is he? Who's Larry? You know of Arabia. Maybe you know nothing about this film. What is the movie really about?
Okay, Lawrence of Arabia is an epic film that follows the remarkable true story of T.E. Lawrence, a British officer who played a pivotal.
That's a beautiful word, pivotal. So,
pivotal role in the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire in World War I. The film explores Lawrence's complex character as he becomes deeply entwined with the Arab cause, navigating the shifting sands of alliances and betrayals. It unfolds against the sweeping landscapes of the Arabian desert, showcasing the harsh beauty of the environment and the challenges faced by those who sought independence. Peter O'Toole's iconic performance as Lawrence and David Lean's masterful direction contribute to the film's status as a cinematic classic, renowned for its stunning visuals and exploration of the psychological toll of war. Which I think that sums it up. So that's from ChatGPT.
Yeah. ChatGPT. Do you think
they stole it from somewhere else?
They stole it from somewhere else and amalgamated it. Or did the AI watch an online copy via and quickly come back? Has the AI consumed the actual film? Or has it just read a bunch of synopsis and spat that out? Because it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's better than what I would write.
I had a thought about what I would say, and it's hard to sort of encapsulate. I think you need just a sort of loose summary.
Yeah. It's good though. What do you think of the movie that you've been told you thought maybe you should have watched a long time ago and bought on iTunes by accident?
I loved it.
Yeah?
Everything about it. I thought the acting was great. The cinematography was extraordinary. Like so many times you're like, is this in a studio or not? And you just told me that none of it was, other than one scene.
Yep, only one scene. Yeah, which we won't say because I mean it's historical, but he they're all dead.
Yeah,
but you see his bust in, is it Westminster? No, it's St Paul's. Is the you see that, and that's it. That's the only, from what my reading was, that's the only set they built. Yeah. Everywhere else is a real location, and you really feel it. Don't you? Feels real.
Yeah, and I just like, though it was a long film, and at times you're like, is this going to end? But it's an epic story, and the character is complex enough to warrant a long movie, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I'll straight up say I think this is absolutely justified being this high on the list.
Yeah. If not, I'd put it higher, I think.
You would rank it above? Well, we've seen 5 movies thus far of the top 100. We have 95 to go. Oh my gosh. And if they're all nearly 4 hours, we are in trouble. But so you would rank it above. Which one? Like where?
I'd put it, I think, at 2.
At 2?
2 or 3, yeah.
So what's number 1 if it's 2? Is it just still Citizen Kane? Then Casablanca?
I feel like the top 3 would be Citizen Kane, Godfather, and Lawrence of Arabia.
That's fair. So Casablanca just got...
I liked it.
Bumped off.
I'm wondering if the colour of Lawrence of Arabia sort of brought even more life.
Yeah, because it is beautiful. So, like, can I ask you a question again? Like, I'm just curious what you think. When you first watched it, when you had the expectations, you'd seen like a small amount of imagery around the film, probably heard a bit of, celebration and people telling you how good it is and it's a famous movie from 60 years ago, that sort of stuff. How did it meet your expectations when you're sitting down to watch it? First time.
To be honest, I didn't know, when watching it the first time, I didn't know anything about it, the time it was set, who this character was, his background at all. I still didn't even know until after watching it the second time. I did a quick Google. So,
when is it? It's set 1916, is it? It's middle of the World War One. It's middle of World War
One.
Yeah,
I think
I know it was World War One.
1916 to 1919, I believe. So I was able to just sit down and just go, give it to me.
Let it wash over you.
Yeah.
It is a movie that probably benefits from, letting that, you could just enjoy it and just enjoy the landscape and enjoy the colours, and the acting's really good. There's nothing really distracting, about it, how it's made, I don't think, for the modern viewer. The only real thing is I don't think it's slow paced. I think they just choose to show things that don't need fast paced dialogue, blah 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 blah. All the dialogue scenes, I think, are pretty fast paced. People chat pretty, back and forth. They get to the point.
It's interesting. Like all of it is painting this picture of who this person is and the people that were around him at the time. Yeah.
And then the reason for the duration is they show so much of the journey. Lawrence goes, so he's a British officer, we've said, and we've since learned, we watched a YouTube channel called History Buffs, which is a great YouTube channel to get some sort of like correlation between.
Not as good as ours, but
yeah. Look, they're trying these other channels. They'll get there. We're very what is it? We're an acquired taste, which means we're at the upper echelon. You get fewer subscribers, but but no, History Buffs is a really good YouTube channel that we referred to watch some just recently before we started recording to see the history of this dude. And one of the things, he's like a sort of like an Indiana Jones type dude. This T. Lawrence,
fascinating character. I'm keen to read his book.
You are? You're going to... you watched Lawrence of Arabia twice in a month. Yeah. So I believe you probably would delve into that book.
Yeah, the audio book probably.
Yeah, the audio book, yeah. But he was... he got interested in history and he went and he walked... It was through Syria. He did 1,000 kilometers or something, or a long crazy amount, and he walked all on his own, and then got really interested in in Arab or Arabic history and language, and learnt the language, and that's where the British Army sort of grabbed him and said, "Be part of this thing." So they sort of had him as this bookworm dude. I guess.
It's interesting. He in the movie he looks like I guess a pretty boy who you'd assume he's not a very good soldier and just eat him alive when they send him out there. But it's interesting. I think his respect for their culture. He didn't come in like I think a typical Englishman would back then, and just sort of say my way is better, and arrogance and sort of just clash against the culture. Whereas he embraced it. He didn't sort of stand and try and dominate them. He just fit in where he could. Yeah,
and I think the film does a really good job of showing that he is really respectful, and even on really subtle things like this. There's a scene when you first meet Lord Faisal, King Faisal, played by Alec Guinness, later to become Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I didn't realise that.
You didn't? I didn't when I first saw it. Yeah. He's brilliant in it. I know that it's not okay now. You would cast an Arabic actor, and obviously that would be the way to go nowadays, and might have even been a better way to go back then. But that doesn't take away from the Alec Guinness does a really good job, really respectful job. Performance is not cartoonish. It's really regal. It's really, and it's said. I saw something where he said that he sort of took his cues from Omar Sharif, who I believe is Egyptian. Maybe I don't know. I should have checked this.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Who's really good in it too, and he took his cues from them to sort of like give an authentic performance. But when you first meet Lord Faisal, they're sitting in his tent, and the British officer who was sort of established to be with the Arab revolt, and work with them, he sits and he shows the soles of his feet. He like shifts his weight in the tent to show, and it's like T. Lawrence doesn't. He keeps his feet behind him because he knew. It's the things that the viewers don't pick up on. I was reading on it. Yeah, that he knows that that's disrespectful, to show. And it would be interesting to rewatch that scene and see if any moment pivots in terms of how they really are listening to one another. Because Faisal at one point does insist on listening to Lawrence, and then sort of makes a comment, like, no, listen to him. He's young. He's allowed to have silly ideas, all those sorts of things. But, it's an entertaining film. It's like really it's just really pretty. Like you said, he was really pretty. I saw another thing that said Noel Coward, who's like a playwright. I don't know. I know the name I've heard, but when the movie came out, he said that they should call it, if he was any prettier, they should call it Florence of Arabia. Because honestly, he's very pretty. He's got these. I don't know if it's the film or whatever they were using, but the sky is so blue. But it also makes Peter O'Toole's eyes are so blue.
But I think he was wearing a lot of makeup and eyeliner as well, which probably made his eyes pop. So.
Yeah, and I watched it in 4K on a 4K screen. So I mean that's standard these days, and the makeup holds up really well. I thought all of them, and so many of them are wearing makeup. Even like the people who are not, white guys going to the Middle East, pretend to be Middle Eastern. It's everyone's sort of, got extra liner on and all those different things. Whether that's something they used to do normally, but they look really
potentially.
It looks really good.
Yeah, I think the costumes and is that what you call it?
Yeah, well, for the film, it's costumes.
Costumes and the acting. I couldn't fault anyone in the film. I thought everyone played their role.
How much do you think that the landscape and the locations aided in your, you were glued to the screen? Because it's not something that you would say. I mean, there's not a lot of films that I can think of. It'll probably come to me after we finish recording, but that are about Bedouin tribes and living in the desert and their authentic way of interacting with one another. These, like there isn't a lot about it. And then you see them in their natural landscapes. The landscapes aren't dramatically different from, like a Western that's all set out in the desert with, in America, right?
Yep.
But how much do you think that the landscape and the scale of it really made that an interesting watch?
I think it was extraordinary, and I was picturing how do these people live in such an environment, and like in a Western, there's still, you know,
They get to
trade
town.
it's like a town, even though it's in some harsh conditions, and these people are setting up tents and moving around, and the logistics of that, trying to bring enough food and water.
Yeah, water is an important element. Several times people get pretty possessive over their wells and things.
Yeah.
There's a specific scene that that is, when we've Googled how this movie was made and put together, because there's so many ways you you don't sort of stop the movie and it takes you out of it, but afterwards when we're talking about it, like how do they light these scenes? Like they couldn't run a generator while they're out there, could they? And couldn't bring all this stuff with them. It took like 14 months or something to make, some crazy amount of time.
And are they just filming on the edges of the desert to make it look like they're in there? Or?
Well, as it turns out, so the producer, Sam Spiegel, insisted on moving the production to Spain after being in Jordan for a long period of time because they were just shooting in these really remote places.
Yeah.
And because the director, David Lean, insisted on filming in where a lot of the original actual stuff happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that doesn't, like there's, you know, Aqaba, when they get to Aqaba, when they take Aqaba from the land, that's not in that place because modern Aqaba was all built up. So that was all constructed in Spain, I believe.
Okay.
But eventually, they moved the production to Spain from Jordan because it was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, and it sounds like it was a true nightmare. There was one thing I read where it was they were drinking water and they would have these white plastic cups or paper cups that they would use to fill up with the water, and it would take so long to set these scenes up, and they would have all the paper cups set off to the side. Yeah. And a gust of wind would come in and it would blow all these paper cups through the scene. I don't know whether that would be anachronistic or whatever, that when it says, you know, out of time, they probably had paper cups in 1916, maybe. I don't know. So they insisted everyone had to have ceramic mugs after that point so they couldn't be blown through the shot.
That's great.
But could you imagine setting up all these shots, all these scenes?
I don't know. And so many people involved.
Yeah. They had thousands of people. There's a scene where they take a train and they get all the horses off it and they just take the sides off. And I'm watching it. Yeah. I literally did think when I saw that, I was like, that's going to be a CGI scene today.
For sure.
There's hundreds and hundreds of horses simultaneously in one wide shot. You can see jumping off the side of a train.
And
one horse sort of
the dust.
And the dust everywhere.
And you're trying to film it, and I'm assuming dust is going in the actor's eyes or mouth while they're trying to
totally
do the scene.
It's really because of the authentic pain that they seem to have gone through to make it. It comes through, and I don't think the average person would miss it. I think you really do pick up on that. It's not just like a film. Oh, look, they did this for real. Blah blah blah. I think people starting to cotton on to the fact that these computer generated things or shot on a back lot or whatever that they don't match up to the real thing. You know.
No. And I guess you hope modern film goes back to filming in these amazing locations. But.
Well, we'll soon find out. There's a movie coming out. You know, this is going to date this podcast because when all the people go back to listen to our back catalogue, all our fans, there's a movie coming out called The Creator, which Gareth Edwards directed, who he did Rogue One and Godzilla, and he did a little indie. I think he started with this movie called Monsters that he shot by himself. And he's just shot all around the world with it. Yeah. But the way he managed it was with a small crew with a Sony EX3 camera, which, like, we're shooting these beautiful, stunning podcasts on two Blackmagics and a Canon, right? So, like, you know, an EX3 is basically the same as the camera in the middle there. Yeah. In terms of cost and everything. So that's how I think they're going to do it, because this movie, 1962, shot on 70 mil, so that's double 35. Everyone, you can do maths. Yeah. But what I'm saying is it's a massive film format because he wanted to capture the scale David Lean did of the desert. And that's basically matched by these full frame digital cameras that are teeny tiny, and you can have small rigs and you can shoot in real locations.
Yeah.
So I'm keen to go to the movies and see that film and discuss it.
Insane.
Maybe we could discuss it on the podcast when we just insert an extra episode in there.
Definitely.
But that's I hope that it goes back to that, because it feels different and it's fun. It's I'll admit it is a bit of a drag with the duration, but I think it all adds up to a really good experience.
Yeah, and like we were chatting about before, these types of films when they're released, there's no TV, or very few people would have had a TV in their home, and they're going to the movies for this amazing experience with their families, and I think it warrants, that sort of length to tell the story. So
Otherwise,
because there's two parts to this film, and you see the progression of Lawrence in the first part of being painted as this extraordinary character filled with compassion and an amazing warrior, and then in the second part you see him turn and see the dark side of him.
Yeah. Whether or not how close that is to history, we've been learning. But it does make for an interesting, thematic thing,
Well, I think from what I understood, he definitely suffered from PTSD. And
how could you not, right?
And that's, the nature of war. I don't think you can go through it and come out unscathed. So
yeah.
Because if they finished at the first part, you just think, oh, he's this amazing character.
Yeah, just goes slaughtering people in the desert. And
I think he'd only killed 2 people at that stage.
Yeah.
So, and one of them unintentionally. So,
do you know, I found myself, I don't know whether it was the circumstances by which I was watching this or if it was the movie itself, but in other films, we'll get an airplane go over. That we're living in the modern world. Airplanes fly overhead during a podcast. I didn't feel like as interested in the themes of the movie.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I just enjoyed the epicness of it. You know? And we should mention that we're shooting this with no lights like we normally shoot, with like a big camera film light, because partly because we're lazy today, but also because we've got the natural light, which is a
beautiful view outside.
It's a beautiful view. We've got summer and we're so thinking maybe David Lean shot in natural light. So this is like, that's our excuse for not setting up a light. Yeah. So if we look different, but I found sometimes with movies, you're sort of like really interested, like The Godfather, I really enjoyed it. Maybe it was because I'd watched it like 5 times overall or something. And this was only like the second time in several years, a long time, that I just sort of enjoyed the watching, not necessarily going, I need to see the consequences of violence and war. Oh yeah, that means that's, embracing, your dark side too much doesn't yield blah, 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 blah. I was like, I just enjoyed the places and the people and the characters and the bit of the adventure and the sort of like, what's the deal? Who's the Arab Council? What was all this history around this? And
I did think about the themes. I felt it wasn't so black and white with a lot of the stuff that was going on. Like if British involvement in the war was a good thing or bad thing, I think you sort of wrestle with that because you've got the superiors that they sit in their ivory tower giving the commands while these young men, I think there's a quote at the end of the film where they talk about these young idealistic men going out to fight the battle, and then once the war's over, the politicians come in to, just clean it up a bit.
That's the ugly part of war, that we're both like, let's just talk about the movie and not talk about the whole world. But it does make you think about all the ways in which they, like all other war, like what war movies we got coming. I mean, we should mention David Lean has got another film in this, which we will see. I was looking it up when you first started introducing the thing. It's number 13. So we'll be watching it soon enough, Bridge on the River Kwai. He's a great director, so we're going to have fun with that. But these war, you'll watch it in all these war movies. Just we'll be discussing the same theme. It's just like there'll be someone sitting back, like at one point you see in the scene, what's his name? The general who's clearly the actor had his head shaved back to this point. That guy?
Yeah.
I looked him up actually to see. I can't remember his name. It's not Hibbert, is it? It's someone else.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, and he's looking up fly fishing in a book while T. Lawrence is like wrestling with like how to respectfully transition power, how do we handle, it doesn't shy away from the fact that, there's a real big difference between, how the Arab Council or whatever would run things versus the British, and doesn't seem to say, well, I guess it tries to say at certain points that it's better.
But I think that's...
Which is, I'm not saying I know the answer.
Well, I appreciated that it's not just as simple as fighting this war, you win, and then it's you give power over, and that's it. There's complexity to how
that's what
countries
it is.
run. And I'm wondering if seeing the different cultures, because often you find when the British or the Westerners are involved, they're trying to implement a Western democracy.
Yeah.
And it's almost giving that idea that it doesn't work. They need to...
Yeah, I saw a comment on... it was a YouTube channel, so I can't verify whether this person was actually Arabic.
Yeah.
But they said that the thing that they liked about the movie Lawrence of Arabia was that the film sort of shows that if you want to survive in these situations in the desert, you have to become like the people, the Bedouin tribes who live there. You don't have a choice. They are like the way they are because that's how they survive in those places.
Yeah.
And to impose another way of life on them, which is sort of what the British were doing, at the beginning when you like suggesting other ways of fighting, what they should or shouldn't do.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to bring in artillery and...
Yeah. And then Lawrence comes in and sort of seemingly just, gives them ideas that it might be outside the realm, but like stays true to how to function in that society and respectful of their culture and stuff. And that seemed like a pretty cool take on the movie. But I'm being very serious. I feel like I should be making some other silly jokes or something.
Well, it's not a comedy though.
It's not a comedy. Yeah. So overall, I mean, like we could continue waffling on. Is there any, do we recommend this film to the average punter? Do we think that somebody, the average person who, last movie they watched was Barbie or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think they're going to enjoy this?
Maybe not someone who likes Barbie, but there's a lot of people who like war films or action films who I think would get a lot out of this.
Yeah.
And maybe watch it in 2 parts.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I would 100% recommend this movie. No worries whatsoever, the way I did with Casablanca or even The Godfather, which is that's 3 hours, just under 3 hours, I think. Something about the duration on this one, and I might have recommended Gone with the Wind and said, it's okay, just watch it, blah, blah, blah. But I think I'm changing my tune. These long movies are brutal. They're too long they need to be, that's where the cinema experience is important.
Yeah.
Because I think that in our modern day phone family thing, well, at least that's my thing. I've got little kids, so it's hard to pay attention to something. Like something always happens while they're awake, and once they're asleep, I'm usually asleep not long after if I'm relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah.
I feel like they're really difficult to watch, and it might be extremely prohibitive for someone who's not got the dedication or a podcast to watch it to put on and sit through. You kind of would, if you're going to watch it, I do think your circumstances would need to be that you can carve out 3.5 hours or an hour and a half over 2 days or something.
Yep.
And you can sit down and you can put it on and maybe get up to go to the toilet, but that's about it. Just enjoy it because letting it wash over you is important. Put your phone in the other room, turn it off. Because you'll be tempted to Google something. I certainly am tempted. I'm like, I wonder if that person was a real person. Yeah. Oh, they're amalgamation. Okay, so amalgamation of what did the real King Faisal look like? Well, which Faisal? And you Google it, there's multiple Faisals, and you're like, okay, now I've got to find out who. And I had to put it down at some point because there is so much interesting stuff in this movie. You'd best just to let the scenery and the performances and the music.
Yeah, the music is fantastic.
One of the best scores. of sort of the era.
I wanted to ask who you thought was the best female actor in this film.
Oh, it had to be the lady who was laying in the foreground after clearly have been raped or murdered or something. Whoops. I said something that, man, this is not a kid-friendly podcast. No, well, that's what do you remember the scene where the Turkish people are leaving? And there was, like they're all dead, but then there's a lady who's in the foreground who was like laying there and she's fully clothed, but she's clearly breathing. So they didn't murder everybody. Something else transpired. I shouldn't laugh about it. It's very, very dark. That's the only moment. I think the joke you were trying to make was lost because I mentioned, but there's literally no one else, no other female speaking parts in the whole film.
All. No.
And all those women are Christian women because it was illegal or it was against their culture to photograph Bedouin women, even the women who are cheering them on as they leave.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what it said. So they had to recruit Christian women to do that. I might bleep out that earlier mention, but yeah, it's terrible. I was
trying to keep it light.
You're trying to keep it light. Yeah,
I think they're showing the reality of that world in that era. It was a man's world.
All the wars were. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I suppose the tribe, the resistance, they were all men. The women and children would have been off somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess my limited exposure would assume the same thing. Yeah. So it's I don't think like this whole thing about like, oh, there's no women in blah, blah, blah. I think who cares? This is not a story where there would have been a lot of
about that.
Yeah. And the next, if there's movies where there's no justification story wise or historically for there to be men in it, and who cares?
My wife made an interesting point saying there's no romantic interest. You'd think in a movie like this they'd have an exotic woman that took Lawrence's interest and
probably throw that in there.
Some romance intertwined throughout the story, but there's none of that at all.
Yeah, and it's not like there's much else happening other than a bunch of power players in a room talking, abstractly about what they should do for the wars, the British officers. Then the same sort of thing in the Bedouin tents. And then a bunch of riding camels.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you want to make the movie extraordinarily boring, that's what it is. You're really going from army place to army place. There's no reason for there to be scenes with women talking at length because they might have done it, but it wouldn't be important to it's really a massive story over that they're trying to tell. It'd be a sideshow on a 3.5, nearly 4 hour movie already.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, cut the love scene. It's like in The Hobbit. You know the Hobbit. You had them at your house. I saw it the other day.
Yeah.
And they have that love thing between one of the Hobbit guys. They show one of the dwarves.
Yeah.
The couple of dwarves that had less facial hair than the rest. So they go, oh, these are the pretty dwarves. So that makes sense for this elf woman who's never even in the books to appear. And then it's like, cut all that.
Yeah.
It's just thrown in there. Who are these people who need there to be a love interest in the movie if it's not like organic to the movie? Or even have any, anyway, I could get on my high horse about that. I liked that it was just I really liked Sharif Ali. Sharif Ali. That's Omar Sharif played that guy. I liked he was my favorite character. I liked him better than Lawrence.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But just all these like the relationships between them, and there's some real loss in there. You do feel the loss. You do feel like the violence is ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else we got to say about it? So we don't really recommend it to the average punter, but if you can carve out the time, watch it.
I think I'd recommend it to most people because it just wasn't what I expected. I did enjoy it, and I just sat down and watched the whole thing without stopping, without the interlude, and I just think it was a great film from start to end. Yeah.
Okay, you win. We do recommend it.
Yeah.
You make a good point. It's just that...
Well, there's just a lot of value there and interesting themes and sort of challenging you on the ideas of war and interacting with different cultures. I found it quite relevant to today as well. So
yeah, well, there we go. Are we giving it how many, what is our rating? How many grains of sand? 5 out of 5 grains of sand?
I was thinking out of, what are those hats?
I don't know.
They wear?
Fez.
Is it a fez?
Well, that's they're the little red Turkish hats, but the Turks were the bad guys in this movie. Though.
No, what's the one with the band and you've got the...
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what those ones are called, but they did take it off. Yeah. We should look it up. There's this sword. I was thinking about maybe the sword. He pulls out the sword that he gets given.
And what's that called?
I don't know. They never. See, the movie's not even interested in these things.
No.
Like they make a moment of him getting that outfit, and they all get to celebrate him, and that is a big. But then very quickly, boom, we're moving on. The story's moving on. It's not like we didn't get to name the name of the thing. We don't.
Even like the scene where they took over
Aqaba.
It's like that scene was
this huge build up.
They just roll in, take over, and
it's because they're just chess pieces moving around, right? Like the details of the battles isn't what the movie's about. It's about the sort of like the endurance of these incredible people who've lived there for a long period of time. It's not really even, I don't feel like it's interested in showcasing that British as being awfully imperialistic and forcing their views on people either. It's just more interested in Lawrence and his interaction with these authentic people.
There was a war scene before then where they completely annihilated a group of Turkish soldiers, and they showed a lot more detail in that, but I think they did that because it really was showing the evolution of Lawrence and his character changing and sort of the psychological struggle he was going through. Yeah. So whereas the war where they actually took over Aqaba, they didn't show much of that because it wasn't relevant to his journey.
It was a great movie. I have mixed feelings. I don't know if it's because of the circumstances by which I was trying to watch it.
Yeah.
Or if it's just, I think that might have been it.
Yeah.
But I'm so excited.
What's your rating?
Oh, it's a 5 out of 5 grains of sand. I'm going to give it grains of sand because they're the only things I know the name of. There's a grain of sand.
Little though.
They are little, but they matter. Each one matters. How about we make it 5 out of 5 billion cubic meters of grains of sand?
Okay.
I don't know. What's another thing? A camel. 5 out of 5 camel humps. A 5-hump camel? Yeah. That sounds like something that would be in a Dr. Seuss book. It's a top rate. What about you?
Yeah, I'd say 5 out of 5. Yeah. I thought it's perfect, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't shorten it.
No, there's nothing you can cut really.
No,
because there are things you could cut, but
you can or you can't.
You can. Sorry, I mean, you can't cut it because they're great. Like there's a scene where he goes, "Sorry, we're nearly wrapping up," and then I keep coming with things. Yeah. But he says, he doesn't say anything. He goes after Omar Sharif interacts with him at the well, which is the famous scene with the really long focal. It's amazing how it's shot and everything. And it's tense and everything. But then they part ways and Lawrence is left on his own to get to meet Faisal. And he goes on this journey and he's like in this echoey valley, and the movie just doesn't stop. He's still moving on his journey, but, singing songs, pumpy, 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 tumpy, whatever he says. That's funny. It's just to hear the echo. You could cut that. You could totally cut that. Just quicker, cut that whole sequence in half. But then what? You'd lose something. That's what the movie is for me. I like those things. Yeah. I like there's a scene when he goes into the desert to rescue a guy that had fallen off his camel in the middle of the night and no one had noticed, and he's obviously, left in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And there's this really wide shot where the surface of the sand takes up like the bottom quarter or fifth of the frame, and then the rest is sky, and these camels and Lawrence are on this tiny they're tiny in the frame, and then the guy who's waiting for him is riding, and you watch the whole thing where the camel rides, goes past him, turns around, comes back.
That whole sequence was extraordinary. My favourite shot was probably where it was the sand in the sky and his young, what was it?
His helper or guy.
Was sitting there sort of sheltering himself. Yeah. It almost reminded me of a shot from a Wes Anderson movie where the colours are just so bold and contrasting. I think he seems to use I reckon they'd be curious to find out whether he's using something that mimics like a 1960s film stock that they would have shot on. This is all falling forward. Here we go. No.
I fix it right as we get to the end of the podcast. I fixed it. Yay! You guys didn't see my feet, but it was holding the thing down the whole time. Yeah, it's just really pretty. So you could cut big chunks of that, but that's the whole movie.
Yeah.
You'd just be going brief bit of sand, bit of chitter chatter, brief bit of sand, bit of battle. But but the whole movie is in there's like da 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 da. You know, those are the moments that really bring the awe and everything in. So anyway, we like the movie and we recommend it. So shall we move on? What are we up to next week?
We're watching The Wizard of Oz, which I've seen that several times before.
I have
think
seen
most people would have.
Yes. So famous Australian film about the conjurer traveling around and, making children disappear in small towns.
What do you mean Australian?
Oh, did you think it was the Judy Garland Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
No, it's an Australian film. The Wizard of Oz. Oh, there's a funny joke. That's not a bad name it's not a bad idea though. I wonder if you can make, copyright. I didn't really lay out a very clear plot. So no, really while we're making ourselves laugh here, we are going to watch the proper Judy Garland 1939 classic Wizard of Oz, which let's find out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, how long is that movie? Because I remember it'll be about 2 hours, which feels like that'll feel like a blink compared to these last two films.
And it's pretty extraordinary.
Yes. Was that a preview of things to come? You're a big fan?
Yeah, well, I think most of us would have seen it when we were younger.
An hour and 42 minutes. It's like we're going on holiday. And that'll include credits.
Times,
yeah, you're going to watch it like 11, 20. Yeah, it's crazy.
I think these movies like Wizard of Oz and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that you watched when you were younger.
Yeah.
They're just beautiful films. And
yeah. Well, we're going to see, so we're going back in time again. So they're going 23 years back. So this is 1962 was Lawrence of Arabia. So we're going back to 1939.
Yeah.
The dawn of, the dawn? Colour? Technicolor?
I don't know.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
So we go from talking about how the colour was a big part of the film to, a movie sort of
plays
third
a huge part. Though, Citizen Kane, black and white.
Yeah.
Number one. And
you
don't always need it to make a good film.
No, you don't. You don't always need it. So we've got, we're going to have a good time. So thank you so much, everybody, for enduring this. I feel like I've had low energy this whole podcast.
Whereas I've been on.
You've been up there. I don't think I had enough coffee today. So, it was a good time. I do look forward to watching this film again. I think I would enjoy if there was a re-showing of Lawrence of Arabia at the cinemas.
Yeah, I think that's if you could watch it at a movie or at the cinemas or an outdoor cinema.
Yeah.
And have an interlude where you chat
get
with
up,
people after.
make some drinks.
Great experience.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us.
Much.
We are Thomas and Nicholas of the Video Lineup Podcast fame. Tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and like and all those things. Comment and tell us how you thought that we were brilliant or not brilliant in our summation of this film, perhaps? Or do we want to hear the not brilliant?
I'd rather not.
Okay, just tell us what your favorite color is.
The film.
Yes, tell us your thoughts on the film. I really would be interested to hear because I know that there's things we've missed discussing because it's such a big thing. But cool. All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
See you there.